That's correct. Yes.
So we are here today in this event, online event, specifically because it's hard to mobilize ourselves because of the COVID situation, the coronavirus situation. For other reasons too, but this is the main reason we decided to do this event online. So I think it is very relevant to explore the link between zoonotic diseases and the situation we are living today. The broader situation, as well as the political situation that it has brought to us, as well as the impact it has on animals. So without further ado, I'm gonna leave the space for you to talk a little bit about this situation to us. And oh, sorry, one last thing. If you have any questions, please add your questions in the little text box below, or you can simply raise your hand at the end if you don't mind being filmed, because this is recorded and also live on Facebook. So thank you, everyone, and it's yours.
Okay.
Thanks, Elisa. That was wonderful.
Yes. Firstly, we'd like to thank you guys.
Elisa and Soren, of course.
Yeah, you guys did a tremendous job. We've been watching the other podcasters or the other interviewers yesterday and today, and I think you're creating this wonderful space for activists, thinkers, creators all together, and raise awareness on different subjects, and of course the needless suffering of the billions of animals around the world.
Yeah, we are pretty impressed by everyone. And,
we certainly are, yes. Yeah. You know, especially back when I started, you know, in activism, not a lot, you know, it was pretty barren landscape. And just to see you guys out there and getting more sophisticated, and of course with the collaboration, which is a huge part of it, I'm very impressed, you know?
Yeah, so that's wonderful. So thanks again. And so, yes, I'm Sarah with Marcello. We are the founders of Plandemic.
Right.
We decided to do the presentation in English. As you can see, it's not easy for me. So Marcello will do a big job today.
All right. There might be a lot of French, and who knows, maybe we'll spice it up with a little Italian and Spanish.
Amazing.
But let's start with explaining what Plandemic is. It's a
Plandemic, our organization.
Right. It's organization and how treatment of animals relates to human disease. And our goal is to set sail around the globe and bring to light the preventative measures of future pandemics.
That is correct. So it's a different idea. So do you want to tell us what's the idea behind the pandemic?
Right. The idea came to us traveling in the very early this year, and we were exploring cenotes and working with the indigenous people there. And of course, then the pandemic broke out and mainstream media. Back to Canada before we were planned to come back.
Yeah, we were kind of shocked like everybody else. Yeah.
Right, and so we came back in quarantine and
with a lot of free time
to think about going around the world and our planet. And this coronavirus, you know, which not too many people know its origins and the history behind it. But it's funny because erupted twice before, and since the 2003, I think it was the SARS epidemic, and then in 2009 there was the MERS epidemic started affecting the planet. so we started realizing it and said maybe we should do something about it.
You'll see it's super interesting, and of course we are all touchés par.
Yeah, we're all affected
Exactly.
by what's going on, and the goal of Project Plandemic is to set sail around the world.
Just like we said, yes, because we first of all we love oceans.
We love travel, and we've worked in foreign countries before. And we're also teaming up with Ocean Environmental Organization we're discussing with as well, because there's a huge environmental problem there with plastics in the ocean, overfishing, and coral reefs being bleached. So we're teaming up with that, and we'll be working with them as well as far as plant-based diet.
As scuba divers, for us, it's super important. So
Right.
So that's it. So just talk a little bit about the journey.
Right. Our journey will take 20 months to complete, maybe more, maybe 24 months.
Yeah.
And it's going to begin in mid 2021. And we'll be in 36 countries.
Yeah, so far.
Local, vegan groups and every stop that we travel at.
Now we're working on our
right. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of things to plan. Just getting the boat ready, and we got so much to do in a year before we do it. And also this presentation we're presenting to you now, what we're planning to present is an audio-visual presentation, which will be totally different what you see today, but we just didn't want to give up this opportunity to speak today. I mean, we're so excited.
Yeah.
So we're testing it out. We're gonna, polish it up and all that kind of stuff. This treatment of animals is having global implications in how a plant-based diet would largely reduce the likelihood of another much deadlier pandemic, most probably fend off Zoonoses. And not doctors or scientists. The American Public Health Association, which is the largest and oldest association of health officials around the world, yelling from rooftops for the past 20 years about the dangers of pandemics.
Yeah, so there's nothing new here. From a long time, scientists.
Views, exactly. We're just trying to do our part and perhaps, tweak interest in people, in organization, and hopefully in governments to make to live in a safer. And the material we'll be using in our presentation.
Yeah, because there's so many info everywhere in the internet.
Especially online, circulating everywhere. And we're basing our focus on the clarity of scientific based research. And Project Plandemic is inspired and backed by the renowned Greger and his book, How to Survive a Pandemic.
Yeah, super interesting to read.
Yeah. And
yeah, you can go on Plandemic.org. We have a little link there. So that's where we took the majority of the info.
Right, because he's been working on pandemics for the past 20 years, and there's just extensive research on it. That's undeniable. So, give you a little background on zoonotic diseases.
Yeah, maybe with a little history. It's usually the way we start. So where do viruses come from?
Well, that's the thing, you know, when the pandemic broke out and people are, you know, where is this virus coming from? Well, the current dialogue surrounding pandemics is as it's a natural disaster, like a hurricane or an earthquake.
Yeah, like something that we don't have any control.
But the reality is that it's a natural disaster of our own making.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you know, to understand COVID-19 and other deadly viral outbreaks, we have to understand their history and get a chance of preventing future pandemics. And also, we have to look back and take lessons, of course, from the past,
Absolutely.
you know? So let's do that. Let's begin. Medical anthropologists have identified three major periods of disease since the beginning of human evolution. The first started just 10,000 years ago
That's right.
with the domestication of animals.
Yep.
When cows and sheep turned into human, relatively benign. Over the past 150 years, measles has killed, what, 200 million people.
Incredible. Yeah.
That is incredible.
Like smallpox, like it came from camels.
And when we domesticated pigs, we got whooping cough. We domesticated chickens, and we got typhoid fever.
We domesticated ducks, and we got influenza. Before we domesticated ducks, no one ever got the flu.
I know, that's mind-boggling. Leprosy probably came from water buffalo. And the common cold, that's known to all of us, came from horses. You know, before we domesticated horses, there was no such thing.
No, it's just, it wasn't there.
So the next great period, 200 years ago, with the Industrial Revolution of the 18th and 19th century, leading to an epidemic of the so-called diseases of civilization.
Yeah, with diseases like obesity,
Diabetes, cardiovascular disease, some forms of cancer. But by the mid-20th century, the age of infectious disease was thought to be over. We got penicillin,
exactly.
we eradicated smallpox, we conquered polio.
It was to the
All the medical journals saying, emerging infectious diseases was something of the past and, would only make a dull story if ever written about. But then, yes, the big but, something changed. After decades of decline in disease, 1975, it started to go back up. People dying from infectious diseases started to go up. New diseases started to emerge and reemerge, unheard of in the world of medicine.
new diseases in 40 years. So that's a lot.
Right, and most of them were newly diagnosed. Now, the state we're in right now is the third era of human disease, which seems to only have started about 40 years ago. Medical historians have called this time in which we live the age of emerging plagues.
Which almost all come from animals.
Almost 10,000 years ago. What has changed in recent decades to bring us to this current situation?
We are changing the way animals live.
Absolutely. One of the biggest reasons is because of our encroachment into wild spaces. Deforestation, grazing land, and displaced many wild species and brought unknown number of viruses in closer contact with people like never before. And it's not just human encroachment into wild spaces that elevates our risk of zoonoses. Around the world and bring animals back into human areas for consumption as pets and sadly as traditional medicine.
Yeah, like we heard a lot about the pangolins in China.
Right, especially after this outbreak of COVID-19. And what the Chinese did was they put a ban on the consumption of pangolins. But there was a couple of problems with that, was that they banned the consumption, but they allowed the use for medical traditional medicine in China with the pangolins. And not only that, when they banned it, what was worse is that, of course, it goes underground on the black market. And what that causes, if there's another outbreak, then it would be almost impossible to trace and to track where this virus happened or out.
Which is a big problem when we are thinking about pandemic.
Right.
We are changing the way animals live.
Right.
Sorry.
So let's go back a little bit further with the big cattle producing nations during the Second World War. What China did was take advantage of the situation, dramatically expanding its beef industry at the expense of the rainforest, what I call the hamburgerization of the rainforest. There we discovered deadly fever viruses, or rather, it discovered us. And that wasn't only in South America. Let's go to the cutting to Africa's rainforest exposed a number of other hemorrhagic fevers, including Lassa virus, the Rift Valley fever, and of course, Ebola.
Ebola.
African rainforests were logging roads cut by National Timber Corporation, hacking deep into the rainforest, dragging along a hungry migrant force which survived on bushmeat, wild animals killed for food. Now, this is upwards of 26 different species of primates, including a number of endangered great ape species like gorillas and chimpanzees who were shot, butchered, smoked, and sold as food. Now, by cannibalizing our fellow primates, we may be exposing ourselves to virus particularly fine-tuned to our own primate physiology. Now, Ebola is one of our deadliest infections, but it's not effectively spread.
Yeah, if we compare to a virus like HIV.
Right. The leading theory as to the emergence of AIDS virus is animal blood and secretion as a result of hunting, butchering, and the consumption of contaminated bushmeat. Experts believe the most likely scenario is that HIV arose from humans cutting their way into the jungle, butchering chimpanzees for their flesh along the way. Wildlife has been hunted for thousands.
But never before like this.
Never before like this. With demand for wildlife outstripping local societies, what have done is set up these intensive captive farms, cramming wild animals in these cramped, filthy cages, and then smuggling them around the world. There are now 20,000 wild animal farms in China alone. And there's many more in Europe, even in North America.
Everywhere.
So we are changing the way animals live, adding to the emergence of these new diseases. You know, there's one way to change our relationship with animals that really outshadows all the rest. In response to this surge of emerging and re-emerging infectious disease, the three leading authorities got together for a joint consultation.
Yeah,
they wanted to know what was going on.
Absolutely. There's the World Health Organization. Right,
and the Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Organization for Animal Humanitarian got together, and they uncovered the key underlying causes of this age of emerging plagues. Number one on their list was the increased demand of animal protein the world over.
We want to eat meat.
Yes, and demand is. So yes, we domesticated animals 10,000 years ago, but never before like this.
Yeah, and especially for pigs and chickens.
Exactly. Chickens used to cramped, filthy football field-sized sheds chickens lying beak to beak on top of their own waste, the overcrowding, the stress, their immune systems, the ammonia from decomposing waste, burning their lungs, the lack of fresh air, the lack of sunlight. Put all these factors together, and what you really have is the kind of perfect storm environment for these emergence of spread of so-called super strains of influenza. These systems represent the most profound alteration of human-animal relationship in the last 10,000 years.
It's
I mean, in other words, you know, if you were like a mad scientist wanted to create the world's deadliest virus,
right.
this is exactly how you would do it.
Yeah,
There's no simpler way to do it.
incredible.
In the early 1980s, chickens in China were raised in tiny backyard flocks. But now there are over 63,000 chickens in China.
Yeah, CAFOs for concentrated animal feeding operations.
Right. I mean, just the sound of it, concentrated animal feeding operation sounds.
It's not good.
It's not good at all, you know. So talk, you know, H5N1 has been blamed on, this is from agricultural companies. They've been blaming H5N1 on free-ranging flocks and wild birds getting together. But people have been keeping chickens in backyards for hundreds of years. And birds have been migrating for millions of years. The bird flu has been around forever. So what turned the bird flu into a killer? Well, farming practices have changed. We put millions of chickens into chicken factory next to a pig factory. And if this virus has the opportunity to get in one of these chicken factories and make billions upon billions of these mutations continuously, and so what we have changed is the way we raise animals and our interaction with those animals. But we changed by the billions.
Yeah.
You know, they're mutating by the billions. Now, there's never been a single recorded emergence of a highly contagious flu virus ever from an outdoor chicken flock. It's the containment of putting them and together in a stress confinement that causes all these problems. And millions of people continue to die of diseases like AIDS and tuberculosis. Why is there so much concern about the so-called bird flu? Before, and because the last time a bird flu virus adapted to human beings, it triggered the worst plague in human history, the influenza pandemic of 1918.
Je sais pas si t'as un micro.
Yeah. The pandemic of 1918 is like the mother of all pandemics.
Right. And again, to mention what we mentioned before, the American Association is the law professionals in the world has called for an end of free farming for nearly 2 decades. So I hope that COVID-19 is the dry run we need, the fire drill to wake us up from our complacency and reform before it's too late.
Absolutely. But right?
Hope, for sure. There's always something we can do about it, just as eliminating the exotic animal trade and live animal markets may go a long way towards preventing the next coronavirus. Reforming the way we raise domestic animals for food may help prevent the next killer flu.
But wait, there's more to that.
If you've noticed that the last time you walked in market, plant-based milks are, and major American companies are now filing for bankruptcy. And also the biggest meat producing companies in North America, Tyson, they're all adding plant-based protein next to their line. They're changing their meat companies to protein companies. And then we have Cargill, which is the biggest price in the States, in North America, I'd say. They're teaming up with Kentucky Fried Chicken and to sell plant-based chicken nuggets. Sense, less labor costs, less safety things all around.
Yeah, well, it's healthy to eat that food on a personal and health basis.
Right. We would prefer to eat chickpeas or lentils ourselves.
Yeah.
But 0%.
Yeah, and yeah, because what about the big meat eater, those hardcore
Right.
don't their meat no matter what.
Right. I'm sure we've all met them, the hardcore, you know, I'm not gonna, you know, you're gonna have to pry this stuff by hand kind of people.
Canadian bacon.
Exactly. Well, for them, I say there's a growing trend to sell agriculture, cultivated meats, clean meat, which is grown from animal cells or actually muscle cells. And, you know, food pathogens like E. coli or Salmonella are due to fecal residue, traces of which can be found on most chickens sampled, and about half of beef and pork chops. So you don't have to worry about them if you're producing meat without the intestines. So you don't put the crap out of if they're crap to begin with. As simple as that. You don't have to worry about brewing up respiratory viruses that can kill millions of people if you're making meat without the lungs.
Oh yeah, it's good for meat, milk.
Exactly. I read just last week there's a company they're producing elevated milk from.
But once again, I'm happy with my milk or oat milk
and other milks. But on a point of view of pandemics, I mean, that's again 0%.
Yeah.
So our food choices just don't affect our personal health, but our global, not just in terms of climate change, but in terms of risk.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, there's a couple of things we left out in our talk today. One is the use of antibiotics in animal agriculture.
Yeah, it's a huge topic.
It's a huge topic, as you're well aware, depending on which survey or report you're looking at, either 70% or 80% antibiotics are used in animal agriculture because, you know, and they're using them for several reasons. One, they would not survive in the conditions that they're being brought up in. And of course, it is for weight gain and profits.
Yeah.
And
the relation between antibiotics and viruses is pretty clear. So anyway, it's a huge topic. We don't want to go there. Maybe on the next webinar.
We can have a whole webinar just talking on that because, as a matter of fact, the 1918 Spanish flu, most people didn't die of the virus, they died of infection. And so if we don't have the proper antibiotics to combat, you know, a severe pandemic, then we're in big trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
That's for sure. And another thing we have to mention also that we didn't mention is the fact that, I think it was 2015, WHO, the World Health Organization, said that processed meats and meats in general are a major cause of certain types of cancer and obesity and diabetes, which, as with this coronavirus, those are the people that are most affected by the virus and are likely to succumb to it. And so this is what we're working on, and we're going to add this in our presentation on another time.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think for today...
Right, we'd like to end this topic with you with a quote, actually, that was sent by one of our new endorsers, Sea Legacy, which is an ocean environmental group. And the quote comes from Robert Swan, who was the first person to walk across the South and the North Pole. And he says, the biggest danger to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. So I'm sure that's something that we can all relate to. And so with that,
right?
with that thought, thank you very much.
Sorry, Alisa, we can't hear you.
Yes, thanks. So I was just saying thank you so much for your interesting presentation and bringing forth information that maybe some people know a little bit, but I think you went into depth into all the different links and also the different animals that bring different types of diseases that we wouldn't even know about. And I think it's not talked a lot about in the mainstream media.
Right, exactly. I mean, there's so much that we didn't even touch on, like Lyme disease started in 1975. They were, clearing up forests to build suburbia homes, and that's how it all started, you know.
Yeah. So to start with, we are now in the question period. So I invite everyone who wants to write down a question. So we have online. You could press. There is an online link to have anonymous questions. So I have one question for you. So knowing all of that, knowing the link, the direct and sometimes indirect link with the destruction of the forest, leading to more contacts with wild animals and humans, wild animals with farmed animals, and then with humans, and also the conditions you were talking about in which the animals are kept, which favors the broad and fast growth and of different viruses. So knowing all of that and this direct link, why do you think, according to you, that most people don't know about it, and we're here today not being able to move, having to wear a mask, teachers either not teaching or having to teach with masks, people being impacted without people knowing? So that's my question, my first question for you.
Well, that's my story. Exactly. It was like from the very start. That's why we wanted to do this. We were kind of aware, and then we started to dig and find out more information. And like I said, the coronavirus happened twice in the past 20 years with the SARS and the MERS. And like I heard Trump speak at his acceptance speech for his nomination for president. He said, "Oh, we're fighting this invisible virus, a pandemic of a lifetime." But it's not a pandemic of a lifetime. Pandemics are happening more frequently than ever before. They're not just happening once in a lifetime, and they're escalating quicker and quicker. And I think people have to start educating themselves. Media has to pick up on it too. The media is not really talking about it. I mean, what is it? Pro Vegan just came out with a report on it as well. But it's news. There was nothing new in it. It's what's been told. Like I said, for the past 20 years, they were pushing it, but nobody seems to be listening. You have big agricultural companies, you have big pharma, and they're all profiting from it for sure.
We have another question which has 1 star. It is, what are the biggest challenges today in terms of putting forward the link between the destruction of the environment and animal use and pandemics? I think you talked a little bit, but if there's something new you want to add, or if not.
Well, there's many things. There's many aspects of it. It's amazing how huge it is. Like I remember, I don't know if you saw the documentary Cowspiracy, right? It was amazing. It was eye-opening to me, seeing all these organizations like Greenpeace, Oceana, Sierra Club, not knowing anything about what's causing, the greatest environmental and health issues. But even in Cowspiracy, they didn't mention anything about pandemics. So it's everybody. It's even animal organizations and environmental organizations are caught by surprise by this. And I think it's not only the general public that has to be made aware of this, but as well as us. We have to understand more in depth the causes and the solutions to this.
Yeah, because chaque geste qu'on pose, comme détruire encore plus d'espace pour prendre plus d'espace en tant qu'être humain, on veut tout le temps développer davantage. Ça force toutes les espèces à se rapprocher de plus en plus. Donc, chaque geste qu'on pose a un impact.
For sure. Over the world overpopulation. As a little kid growing up, I knew that was a problem.
Yeah. So there's nothing new. We just hope that with that COVID-19, people will be a little bit more here open.
Asking questions, and this pandemic is not over. This virus can mutate.
And we know it's not a question of if.
Right.
But when, something about the quote.
Yeah. And how deadly the next pandemic will be, I think we're lucky that this one is not as virulent as it could be, especially if it's an avian type of flu.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think Sarah has a question.
Yes, it is.
Hello.
It's not very clear to me, but I'll try to say it. So I watched the series Plandemics on Netflix, who came out in January, I believe. So clearly it was in the making while we knew what everything was happening. So it boggles my mind how it came and it took the world by surprise. So it leads me to ask myself, do we have a serious information and making sense problem here, at least where we are in North America? Because even I was very focused, and I don't think it was wrong. And I think that in fact, we should focus on other crises which are there too and haven't gone away, like the environment crisis and the climate crisis is just around the corner. But what is your explanation for the scientists were talking and no one was
they weren't talking, they were yelling from rooftops, from mountaintops.
So how is that, and how is this the same as with the environment? The scientists are still talking and yelling, and yet
that's what we're saying. We're hoping that this is a wake-up call, a fire drill, a kick in the ass, something, because it can get a lot worse than this. And the only difference between this and the 1918 pandemic is that the 1918 pandemic, they call it the Spanish flu because there was the World War I happening. And there was censorship from all the fighting countries. And Spain was a neutral country. So they put it on their front page, whereas the United States, if you found a blurb about it, it would be somewhere buried in the back pages. Nobody wanted to talk about it. So when it was over, and it passed, it was just buried. Nobody talked about it anymore. And same thing with this pandemic here. They're blaming different reasons. Oh, they're saying it comes from the wet markets in China and Wuhan, right? But, viruses, pandemics can come from factory farms in the United States or in Canada. There's big lobby pressure groups from I guess, big pharma and agricultural companies that are spinning this around. When ProVeg came out with their report a couple of weeks ago, I think it was the European Infectious Disease that said, well, they're contradicting the report. They're saying, well, factory farms are not the first cause of these pandemics and risk of pandemics. It's overpopulation and travel around the world. So, everybody's putting a spin on it. It's mind-boggling to us as well. And that's why we're trying to do this. We're trying to raise awareness, and hopefully somebody's going to listen.
Si je me permets en français, je crois malheureusement que beaucoup de gens, s'ils ne sentent pas la menace assez présente, ne prendront pas l'information, peut-être pas au sérieux, mais du moins ne feront pas de changement au niveau de leur vie à n'importe quel niveau. S'ils ne se sentent pas menacés d'une certaine façon, l'information va passer et va être vite oubliée. On le vit actuellement avec la pandémie actuelle. Rapidement, les gens souhaitent retourner à une vie normale. C'est ce qui ressort beaucoup. Retournons à la normalité, aller dans les cafés de votre quartier pour redonner, relancer l'économie. Donc, les gens veulent retrouver ce qu'ils avaient. Alors, je pense que quand la menace se fait pas assez sentir, mais je parle vraiment de menace lorsqu'une personne ou une famille, des parents sentent que leurs enfants sont en danger. Je pense que tant que ça, c'est pas assez présent, malheureusement, en tant que société, les choses ne bougent pas. C'est un constat malheureux pour moi. J'ose espérer que j'ai tort.
But it's human nature. We won't shore up the levees until after the flood. We don't think things after the disaster, It's kind of human nature.
So
sorry for interrupting you, Sohail. I think Sandra had a little intervention here.
Oh, hi. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
A question. I'm very sorry, my English is not very good, so I hope I will ask it right. Are you not scared that with all this pandemics thing and reflections about it, we are not talking much about the animals and what they are living, and maybe that the world will maybe start to talk about reducing, I don't know, the size of, j'ai pas le mot, c'est les élevages of the industry, and they will maybe reduce the industry but not stop it, because everyone wants still their meat and their cheese and everything. So are you
You're frozen up a little bit.
Sandra, tu as bloqué un peu. Tu peux aussi poser la question en français.
I think I understand is, definitely, whatever they can do to get us to our ultimate goal is, to be vegan. But just giving chickens twice the space that they're in right now in those battery cages would significantly reduce, pandemic risk. Just supplying straw for pigs, that are gestating would definitely reduce the stress in pigs, So there's little steps they can do, but all these little steps we hope will lead, a bit further, get them going to where we, ultimately want them to go. So any step towards that direction, I think, is a positive move, for sure. That means they're listening and they're doing something. But it's people like us that will make the change. It's not governments or corporations. I'm sure you're well aware of that.
I had a little question for you. So we have talked a little bit about how we know how, the general public is impacted by limitation in our daily life, and how animals are even more impacted, being called and killed by thousands, and which is not new for their life anyways, but in the ways they're killed is very, very brutal, being put alive in big mass graves, still alive. In any case, so now we talked about animals and we talked a little bit about general public humans, but there's also, for example, the people who are touched, I think you mentioned it in terms of workers, but people who are either economically disadvantaged or people of color who are in terms of environmental racism have died at a higher rate than the normal population of COVID because of other economical factors, for example. So and that the fact that they work in slaughterhouses and have horrible conditions, mental illnesses. So how can we have different populations here that we could at first sight think, well, workers won't want to join the vegan movement, right? Because they kill animals and vegans are advocating for animals. And we could think, well, the general public won't want to join vegans because they find vegans crazy. Or we could say, oh, well, there's people of colors because of rational reasons that there is lots of colonialism and sexism and racism and other isms that they're not sure that they want to join veganism, and the vegan movement on their side are talking a lot about animals and others don't feel that they're included. So I feel that in order to actually advocate for a large scale change, we need people, and for that, and we also need to there is a narrative where warfare between different groups, and this warfare and this antagonistic and opposition will actually lead to nothing on all sides. So do you have an idea of how we could actually bring all of those different narratives, because they're all interconnected, to actually bring people together instead of pushing them on different avenues and different axes? What would be your thoughts about that?
It's what I mentioned in the very beginning of our talk 25 years ago when I started in animal activism. It was mind-boggling how, the general population and so tiny the activism was, compared to today, and you're saying you're fighting. At least we're here now. Before 25 years ago, we weren't here. It was like so far apart. I remember we were doing some, raising some funds for some animal organization, and I got a call in from a radio station, and they said, well, how dare you do this, care for animals when there's children suffering and there's people in poverty and all this. And you know what we're doing? You can't scrutinize what we're doing because, we're expressing a lot of goodness, a lot of love. The majority of the population are doing absolutely nothing. If you look at the majority of the population, 90% are neither, fighting, opposing, or trying to defend. That's the majority of people. And those people are slowly coming on board, compared to just 25 years ago. It's growing. I mean, I see like a huge difference happening. There is a revolution. It's happening slowly in terms of years, but it is happening. There's so much change going on, so much change. I just say we just keep going, just keep moving forward. Hopefully now with pandemics, the clock is ticking. There's a lot more severity to what we're doing.
Well, thank you so much. I think we'll have to stop because we have to prepare for the next panel. It was so nice to have you too. And thank you for being there. Thank you for, Projet Méduse, our partners, and Nambi Radio, and everyone here for assisting and being there. I'm sorry if I hadn't have the time to answer all the questions. Maybe